Her brother-in-law tried to ruin her marriage, but what he never expected was losing his own family instead. The betrayal, the lies, and the shocking truth will leave you speechless. Stay till the end to see how justice unfolds and a broken woman rises stronger than ever. The wedding bells rang in Tumba village as the people gathered to celebrate the union of Fola and Tamina. Tamina, known as the pride of Mombasa, was loved by all for her gentle spirit and sharp mind. Life had not been easy for her, losing her parents in a tragic fire at a young age and being raised by her aging grandmother. But despite the hardship, Tamina never complained. She worked hard, made her own natural soaps from local herbs, and carried herself with quiet dignity. When Fola, a respected palm oil trader from the neighboring village of Tumba, met her at the Mombasa market, he knew immediately that she was the one. She wasn't loud or flashy. She didn't chase wealth. Her beauty came from her peace, and that peace drew Fola in. Their love grew quickly, but deeply. Fola didn't care that she wasn't from a powerful family. He saw her heart, her humility, and her strength. So, when he told his family he wanted to marry Tamina, most of them were happy. Most, but not all. Kwajo, Fola's older brother, sat quietly as the family talked. He nodded when others cheered the engagement. He clapped during the marriage rites. He smiled when Fola exchanged vows. But inside, his heart twisted with bitterness. You see, Kwajo had spent months convincing Fola to marry his wife's younger sister. That marriage would have kept their family wealth tightly locked, connecting both brothers to the same in-laws. It was a strategy, a plan, but Fola had thrown all that away for a village girl who sold soap. From the moment the wedding drums stopped, Kwajo began watching Tamina closely. Every move she made, every word she said, he stored it in his mind like evidence. He wasn't going to fight loudly. No, he would wait, plan, and strike when the time was right. Because for Kwajo, Tamina was not just a mistake, she was a threat. But Tamina, unaware of the storm brewing, gave her heart fully to her new home. She treated Fola's mother like her own. She helped in the compound, never complained, and tried to please everyone. Fola, in return, loved her deeply. He often praised her kindness, saying, "I've never known peace like this before." Still, in the shadows, Kwajo plotted. To outsiders, he was the proud brother. He smiled during village meetings. He gave Tamina fake compliments. But behind closed doors, he whispered doubts, made snide remarks, and began laying traps. He couldn't accept that his younger brother had defied him, that a girl from nothing had become the queen of the house. What began as a beautiful love story was now surrounded by silent jealousy. Tamina didn't see it yet. Fola didn't suspect it. But the war had already started, and the enemy wasn't far away. It was living right under their roof. Kwajo's smile never reached his eyes. At every meal, every family gathering, he was there, watching, waiting, pretending. Tamina tried to respect him, calling him big brother and serving him first at dinner. But no matter what she did, it was never enough. When she prepared the family's favorite okra soup, Kwajo would sniff and say, "Ah, this tastes different. Not like Mama used to make it." When she swept the compound, he'd point to an invisible spot and say, "You missed a corner." It wasn't just criticism, it was constant, quiet attacks wrapped in false concern. At first, Tamina brushed it off. She thought maybe he was just difficult to please, but soon it became clear. This wasn't misunderstanding, it was malice. He didn't raise his voice or throw insults. He just chipped away at her confidence, piece by piece, in front of others, always with a smile. In family meetings, when Tamina offered a suggestion, Kwajo would chuckle loudly and say, "Ah, the new wife wants to run the family now." And when others laughed along, Tamina would sit silently, her face still, her heart cracking. Fola noticed. He began speaking up. "Kwajo, that's not fair. Let her talk." But every time Kwajo would raise his hands and laugh. "I'm only joking, brother. Don't be so serious. We're family, aren't we?" That was his trick. He wore a mask of laughter to hide his bitterness. And every time Fola defended Tamina, Kwajo grew colder. His eyes would follow her like a hawk, picking apart every move she made. He started spreading whispers around the village. "Fola's wife is trying to control him," he said to neighbors. "Since she came, he doesn't listen to anyone anymore." These words traveled like fire through dry grass, reaching the ears of elders, reaching Fola's own mother. Tamina, still new to the family, felt the shift. Conversations stopped when she walked into rooms. Some relatives gave her side eyes, no longer greeting her warmly. She felt the walls closing in, but she didn't want to trouble Fola, so she kept quiet. even as her nights were sleepless and her days grew heavier. Fola, though, wasn't blind. He began seeing through Kwadwo's fake smiles. One evening, after a long day, Fola came home and found Tamina sitting alone, her eyes red. She hadn't said a word, but he knew something was breaking inside her. He held her hand and said, "Don't let his bitterness steal your peace. I chose you because of your heart, and I will protect you." But even with Fola's support, Tamina knew something darker was coming. Kwadwo's games were getting bolder. He no longer hid his dislike. His tone had changed. His jokes had sharp edges. And in his silence, there was now a threat. Tamina had walked into a family with love in her heart, but she was starting to understand. Some battles are fought not with fists, but with words, whispers, and shadows. And Kwadwo was just getting started. Kwadwo took his bitterness to the next level. He didn't shout, didn't argue. He simply whispered, and he knew exactly where to go. Every afternoon, he strolled through the village, smiling, greeting elders, and dropping his poison in casual conversations. "Tamina is always so quiet," he would say. "You know, the ones who don't talk much are usually hiding something." He laughed after saying it, making it seem harmless. But the seed was planted. At the palm wine joint, he leaned close to his friends and said, "You know, she wasn't always in soap business. They say she used to work as a maid in Mombasa. That's how she met Fola. She must have bewitched him. How else does a trader marry a girl with nothing?" Again, laughter followed, but the words stuck in people's minds. The villagers began looking at Tamina differently. He didn't stop there. One evening, he told Mama Nuka, the town gossip, "I saw her mixing herbs late at night, alone in the backyard. No one knows what she puts in her soap. Maybe she's using charms on Fola. Men these days don't see clearly when they're under a spell." Mama Nuka's eyes widened, and by the next morning, half the village had heard that Tamina was using dark herbs. Even people who once praised her now kept their distance. They no longer smiled when she passed by. They whispered behind her back. The market women stared at her with suspicion. And worst of all, Fola's mother, who once treated her like a daughter, suddenly became cold. She stopped eating Tamina's food and started locking her bedroom door at night. She moved her jewelry box into her own room and began praying loudly, casting away evil spirits from the house. Tamina was heartbroken. She could feel the shift everywhere. Her greetings were no longer returned. Her presence brought silence into rooms. She had done nothing wrong, yet the eyes around her were full of doubt and fear. She cried at night into her pillow, hiding her tears from Fola. She didn't want to burden him. He already had so much to deal with, and she feared he might think she was complaining or trying to cause a rift between brothers. But inside, the pain was growing. She had entered this marriage with love and hope, thinking she had found peace. Instead, she now felt like a stranger in her own home. Kwadwo's lies had wrapped around her like chains, squeezing her spirit day by day. Still, Tamina chose silence. She held her head up during the day, smiled when needed, and kept doing her chores with quiet grace. But her heart was bleeding, and the worst part, she knew the one behind it all was smiling to her face, pretending to be family. The man who clapped at her wedding was now slowly turning her world into a cage, and no one else seemed to see it. Fola couldn't ignore the change anymore. Whenever Tamina entered a room, the air turned cold. People who once laughed with her now kept their distance. Even his mother, once so fond of Tamina, barely spoke to her. Fola watched it all with growing unease. The stories spreading through the village were ugly, and they all pointed back to Kwadwo. But how could he believe that his own brother, the man who raised him when their father died, would go this far? He confronted Kwadwo one evening. "Why are people saying these things about Tamina? That she uses charms? That she used to be a maid?" Kwadwo didn't blink. He simply shrugged and said, "I don't start talk, brother. People speak when they see strange things. You've changed since she came. You used to listen to me. Now, you only hear her." Fola walked away, heart heavy. That night, he sat beside Tamina under the mango tree outside their home. She was silent, staring into the distance. Fola placed his hand over hers and said softly, "My brother can be harsh, but he means well." Tamina didn't flinch. She looked at him with tired eyes and replied, "Sometimes family can still be poison, Fola." Her voice was steady, not angry, just worn out. Her words hit Fola harder than any shout. He remembered the nights Kwadwo used to cover him with a blanket as a child, the times he gave up food so Fola could eat. But now, that same brother was turning his house into a battlefield, and Tamina, kind, gentle Tamina, was the one bleeding silently. Days passed, and Fola found himself in the middle of a storm. If he defended Tamina too strongly, Kwadwo grew colder, accusing him of choosing a woman over blood. If he stayed silent, Tamina grew distant, wounded by the silence of the man she trusted most. He was torn in two. Loyalty to his past battled with love for his present. He began watching more closely. When Tamina served food, he saw the way his mother turned her plate without thanks. When Tamina walked through the market, he heard the whispered insults that made her shoulders stiffen. And at night, when she thought he was asleep, he heard her sob quietly into the bedsheet. He realized the damage was no longer hidden. It was now a slow, open wound, spreading across their home. Yet, every time he looked into Kwadwo's face, he saw the brother who once protected him. How could he confront the man who helped raise him? But how could he let Tamina suffer for sins she never committed? Fola knew a decision had to come. Soon. He could no longer stand in the middle, trying to balance both worlds. One path led to peace, the other to betrayal. But no matter what choice he made, someone would bleed. And in his silence, the wound in his home only grew deeper. The market day had started like any other. Tamina woke early, swept the compound, and helped prepare food for the family. She greeted neighbors kindly as she always did, even those who barely returned her smile these days. But as the sun reached its peak, chaos erupted. Mama Kemba, a respected elder from 2 compounds away, stormed into the courtyard, screaming that her precious gold bracelet had gone missing. Her voice shook the entire street. "I wore it this morning," she cried. "I removed it to wash my hands while buying yam, and now it's gone." People gathered quickly. Suspicions swirled like smoke. Some eyes turned to Tamina. Someone whispered that she was the last person seen near Mama Kemba's stall. Another said she was picking herbs, bending low, maybe hiding something. The whispers grew louder, until even Tamina felt them pressing against her skin like sharp stones. Mama Kemba demanded the compound be searched. Fola, still unsure but trying to calm the growing tension, allowed it. The courtyard was turned upside down. People opened baskets, lifted mats, peeked behind pots. Then a young boy called out, "It's here!" Everyone turned as he held up the golden bracelet, found beneath Tamina's cooking mat. The silence was heavy. Then came the gasps, the pointing fingers, the murmurs of, "I knew it," and "she always seemed too quiet." Tamina stood frozen, her heart pounding. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Please, I did not take it. Someone planted it. I swear on my parents' graves." But Kwadwo stepped forward, his voice like thunder. "Enough of these lies. We welcomed you into this family, and this is how you repay us. You have brought shame to our name. You must leave this house. Today." Tamina turned to Fola. Her eyes begged him to speak, to stop this, to see her, but Fola said nothing. His lips parted, but no words came. His silence hit her harder than any slap. Tamina's knees buckled, but she didn't cry, not in front of them. She walked into the house, packed a small bundle of her clothes, and tied it in an old wrapper. No one helped her, not even his mother, who now watched from the doorway with narrowed eyes. Kwadwo stood tall, satisfied. As night fell, rain began to pour. Thunder rolled across the sky, but Tamina stepped out barefoot, with her head held as high as she could manage. Mud clung to her feet, her wrapper soaked through. But still, no one called her back. She walked into the darkness, betrayed, humiliated, and alone. The bracelet glinted faintly in the shadows behind her, still clutched in the hand of the child who had found it, a child who had been playing near Kwadwo's room just hours earlier. But no one noticed. Not yet. Rain beat down on Tamina's shoulders as she walked barefoot along the muddy road, her wrapper soaked and clinging to her skin. The night was cold, but her heart burned hotter than ever. Each step hurt, not just from the stones on the road, but from the silence Fola had given her. She walked for hours through the storm, with nothing but her small bundle and her dignity. By dawn, she reached the edge of Umbasa. Her grandmother's hut stood just as it had for years, small, weathered, and full of warmth. The old woman opened the door and gasped. Tamina looked like a ghost of herself. No words were needed. Her grandmother pulled her inside and wrapped her in a dry cloth, sobbing softly. But Tamina's eyes remained dry. She stared into the fire and whispered, "I will not die like this." The next morning, Tamina rose early. She washed, tied her hair, and walked straight to the back shed, where she had once made soaps as a teenager. Her hands remembered the motions, mixing, molding, wrapping. She found old bottles of essential oils, herbs from the garden, and leftover materials. She worked until her fingers ached. That night, She slept beside her grandmother, her mind racing with ideas. Word spread quickly. Tamina is back. She's making soap again. Her first sales were small, just to neighbors. But her product was different. She used only natural ingredients. The scent stayed on the skin. The lather was rich. People loved it. She named it Lena Lush, after her late mother Lena, who had taught her the craft. She didn't speak of what happened in Tumba, not once. When asked, she only smiled and said, "It's behind me." Within a month, her orders tripled. Women from nearby villages came to buy in bulk. One day, a merchant from Kuto City passed through Mombasa. He bought 1 bar to try, and returned the next week asking for 50 more. "Can you meet demand?" he asked. Tamina nodded without blinking. Yes. They struck a deal. He'd distribute Lena Lush across Kuto. She'd handle production. The money started flowing in. Tamina expanded, hired 3 women to help, built a small factory beside her grandmother's hut, bought new tools, better ingredients. Her soaps found their way into shops, salons, and city homes. Her name began to carry weight. Still, she kept quiet. She didn't boast. She didn't seek revenge. She focused on building, on healing, on proving that her worth wasn't tied to a man's silence or a brother-in-law's lies. She became known as the Soap Queen of Mombasa, not because she shouted, but because her work spoke for her. Her grandmother, once frail and tired, now smiled every morning, helping her label packages and pack boxes. Tamina had risen from disgrace, not through magic or miracles, but with her own 2 hands. In silence, she built an empire. And her past? It would soon hear of her again. Fola sat on the wooden bench outside his home in Tumba, his mind still restless from all that had happened. Days had passed, but the silence left behind by Tamina haunted him. He kept playing the scene over and over in his head, her face wet with tears and rain, her feet bare as she walked away into the night. He hadn't said a word. He hadn't stopped her. He had chosen silence. Then one morning, Nana Quite, the most respected elder in the village, slowly walked up to him. His cane tapped softly on the ground, but his voice was steady. "Fola," the elder said, sitting beside him, "there is something I must say. I should have said it long ago." Fola looked up, unsure of what to expect. Nana Quite took a deep breath and continued. "That day the bracelet was found, I saw Kwajo. I saw him with my own eyes. He slipped it under the mat while everyone was outside. I wanted to speak, but fear held my tongue. I failed you, and I failed her." Fola froze. His breath caught in his throat. "You saw him?" he whispered. "Yes," the old man nodded, guilt heavy in his voice. "I can't carry this secret anymore. I pray it's not too late." Fola's heart dropped. The truth hit him like a lightning strike. All this time, his own brother, the one he trusted most, had betrayed Tamina. He had let a lie tear apart the only woman who truly loved him. He had let her walk away into a storm, alone and humiliated. Without waiting, Fola jumped to his feet. He didn't speak to anyone. He didn't stop to question his brother. He saddled his horse and rode hard toward Mombasa, dust rising behind him. Regret pounded in his chest with every gallop. When he reached the village, it looked different than before, more lively, more colourful. People carried boxes marked Lena Lush. He followed the crowd until he saw a small building with women packing soaps into bags. His heart raced faster, and then he saw her. Tamina stood tall, dressed in a beautiful wrapper, her skin glowing, her eyes focused. She was giving instructions, her voice calm but firm. She looked nothing like the woman who left in tears. She looked powerful. She looked free. Fola stepped down, unsure if he even had the right to approach. She turned slowly when she noticed him. Their eyes met, his full of shame, hers full of strength. "Tamina," he said, barely able to speak. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply asked, "Why are you here?" Fola lowered his head. "I know the truth now. Nana Quite told me. Kwajo planted the bracelet. I failed you." There was silence. Then Tamina said softly, "Yes, you did." He looked up, hoping for a second chance, but he could already see. The woman standing before him was no longer waiting for apologies. She had moved forward, and she wasn't turning back. In the village of Tumba, things began to shift. Whispers that once followed Tamina were now circling Kwajo's home. His wife, Abina, had always stood by him, silent and obedient. But one evening, while Kwajo was bathing, his phone buzzed repeatedly. Curiosity and suspicion pushed her to check it. What she saw shattered her heart. Dozens of messages between Kwadwo and a woman who sold tomatoes at the local market. The texts were shameless. Sweet words, secret meetups, and even promises of gifts meant for Abina and their children. Her hands shook, her eyes filled with tears. But she didn't cry in silence like Tamina once had. When Kwadwo came out of the bathroom, she stood there, phone in hand, and said, "What is this?" Kwadwo didn't even hide his anger. He snatched the phone, and without warning, slapped her hard across the face. The slap echoed in the room, but Abina didn't fall. She looked at him with fire in her eyes. That was the moment something inside her broke. The next morning, with the help of a neighbor, she packed her clothes and her son's school books. She walked straight to the village square, where market women and elders gathered, and shouted for all to hear, "This man cheats and beats! He is not a husband, not a father, not a man!" People turned, shocked. Some women clapped. Some men shook their heads. But the truth was out. Kwadwo's pride had been dragged into the dirt, just like he once dragged Tamina's name. That same evening, Fola gathered the entire family in the compound. His mother, uncles, cousins, all were seated under the large mango tree. Fola stood tall, no longer confused, no longer afraid. "My wife was never a thief," he began. The bracelet was planted. Nana quite saw it. Kwadwo did it. Gasps filled the air. He looked straight at his brother, whose face turned pale. "You destroyed my marriage. You lied to all of us. And now your own house is falling." Kwadwo opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He tried to explain, to shout, to twist the story, but no one cared. Not anymore. The same people who once listened to his poison now walked away. Even their mother, who once doubted Tamina, turned her face in shame. Kwadwo was left standing alone, his wife gone, his children gone, his lies exposed, his name ruined. Everything he built with envy and deceit had crumbled. He had tried to destroy someone else's peace, but in the end, he destroyed his own. And Tamina, far away in Kuto City, she signed another business deal that same day. Her name was on the rise. Her life was shining. She never needed revenge. Karma had done the job. The sun was just rising over Mbasa when Fola arrived. His heart pounded as he walked through the bustling compound where Tamina's workers moved with purpose. Women in uniforms packaged soap, others handled orders, and some trained in the back courtyard. Tamina stood in the center, strong, graceful, and completely transformed. Her presence demanded respect. She was no longer the quiet wife who once cried in the shadows. She was a leader. Fola didn't care about the crowd. He walked straight to her and dropped to his knees in the dirt, in front of everyone. His voice trembled. "Tamina, I failed you. I listened to lies. I doubted your heart, and I let you walk away when I should have fought for you. I don't expect you to forget what I did, but I will spend the rest of my life earning your forgiveness." The courtyard went still. All eyes were on Tamina. She looked at him for a long moment. Her face was unreadable. Then, slowly, she reached out and helped him to his feet. No words, just a quiet nod. But that nod meant everything. A week later, they returned to Tumba, but not to the house where the betrayal began. Fola didn't want to stay under the same roof where his wife had once been shamed. Instead, he used his savings to build a new home on the edge of the village, a peaceful place surrounded by trees and sunlight. Tamina named it House of Hope, but it wasn't just a home. Tamina had a vision. She opened the doors to women who had been accused, abandoned, or hurt like she had been. Some came with children, some came with tears, but all found comfort in Tamina's words and guidance. She taught them soap making, sewing, and small business skills. Fola supported every step, using his hands to help build training rooms and deliver supplies. People from the village began to talk, but this time with respect. The same neighbors who once whispered behind Tamina's back now sent their daughters to learn from her. Even Fola's mother came one day, quietly leaving a basket of food at the doorstep without saying a word. Tamina never rubbed her success in anyone's face. She didn't seek revenge or shout her victory. She simply lived her truth, helped others, and let her actions speak louder than any lie ever told about her. As for Fola, he never stopped apologizing in small ways. Through his service, his love, and his loyalty, he didn't just return to Tamina. He returned a changed man, one who had learned the hard way what it meant to stand beside someone through truth and storm. Their love had been tested, broken, shattered, but it came back stronger. not through perfect words, but through honest actions. Together, they turned pain into purpose and built something far greater than a marriage. They built a legacy. Kwadwo's world fell apart faster than anyone expected. When his wife found the messages revealing his cheating with a woman from the market, she didn't just confront him, she left. Packing her bags with their 2 young sons, she walked away from the home they once shared, leaving Kwadwo alone to face the truth of his actions. The village whispered, and soon everyone knew what kind of man he really was. At the village square, Kwadwo's wife told the story of betrayal and lies. The neighbors watched, shocked and disappointed. His reputation, once strong and respected, was shattered. People stopped trusting him. Traders and farmers who once bought palm oil from his family now refused to do business with him. His farmland, once fertile and thriving, began to dry up, not because of weather, but because no one wanted to help a man who had betrayed his own family. His sons, confused and hurt, chose their mother's side. They stopped visiting him, leaving Kwadwo to face the loneliness he had created for himself. No laughter echoed in his house anymore. The roof began to sag, the walls cracked, and the once bright fire in his eyes faded into bitterness. He now lives alone in a rusted, falling-apart hut behind the old village hall, a place where people cross the street to avoid looking his way. Time and regret have worn him down. His name is now a warning, a story told to children about jealousy and betrayal. Kwadwo's jealousy poisoned not just his family but himself, like poison in water, unseen but deadly. The villagers say that jealousy within a family is the most dangerous kind of poison. It blinds people, turns them against those they should love and protect. Kwadwo's story became proof that loyalty to the wrong person can destroy everything you have. You can try to hide the truth, but what you do in darkness will always come into the light. While Kwadwo's life fell apart, Tamina and Fola's story grew stronger. They showed that kindness might bend under pressure, but it never truly breaks. Their love and forgiveness became a shining example in Tumba village. And Kwadwo, he is a man left to face the bitter consequences of his choices, alone, forgotten, and regretting every step he took to harm those closest to him. This story reminds us all, never let jealousy blind you. Protect your family with truth, kindness, and loyalty, because what is done in secret will always find its way into the open, and only those who act with honesty and love will stand strong when the dust settles. If this story touched your heart and made you think about the power of family, trust, and forgiveness, then remember, true strength comes from kindness. Even when life tries to break you, we all face moments where jealousy, betrayal, or pain threaten to destroy what we hold dear. But just like Tamina, who rose from the darkest night to build a new life, you too can find hope and courage to overcome any challenge. Never let bitterness or hatred poison your soul. Choose love, honesty, and forgiveness, because these are the things that heal wounds and build bridges stronger than any betrayal. And always remember, what you do in the shadows will one day be seen in the light. So live with integrity and be kind, even when no one is watching. If you believe in the power of truth and love, please take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message today, whether they are struggling with family, friendship, or heartbreak. Your support means the world and helps us bring more stories that inspire and uplift. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories that touch the soul and change lives. Thank you so much for watching and being part of this journey. Together, we can spread hope and kindness, one story at a time.